Peter Pisani, are you there?
Yes, hi. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, thank you so much, man. Thank you for contacting me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your patience, too. I had a lot of problems with the dentist and all kinds of stuff, and I left you hanging there a few times. So thank you very much for being patient with me and rescheduling. I really appreciate that. Now, tell us about yourself. Who is Peter Pisani?
Okay, well, as you said, my name is Peter Pisani. I'm a 43-year-old who grew up under the shadow of Amityville. As a young child, I was somewhat thrust into it. My mother, in the 80s, had married Ronald DeFeo, the Amityville murderer. So, at that point on, my mother had helped this man through the years promulgate various tales. I got to assume there was monetary compensation. I don't know offhand. I was a kid. What I do know, though, is that the story is still being told and retold, and it's being billed by these gentlemen as true stories that they're telling. And they're just not. I was there in the time frames they're describing, and I 100% will say that the tales told by Rick Osuna in the night the DeFeos died, and his partner, on again, off again, Ryan Katzenbach of Catco Media, who made the movie, the series known as Shattered Hopes, based off of that book. In my eyes, they're just making money off of dead kids, to be blunt.
Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions. Now, you say your mom married DeFeo in the 80s. How old were you?
Now, you know, my mother, if we were to dig into her, and many, many people have, you'll come to find she has a lot of paperwork. I'm not positive if she married him in 85 or 89, or if they married in 85, divorced, and remarried. I've heard it told that way as well. But the earliest that I can attest to is 85.
And how old were you at that time, though?
In 85, I was 10.
10 years old. Okay. And she married him while
he was... Old enough to know.
Yeah, right. And she married him while he was in prison?
While he's in prison, while she's married to my stepfather, who's still surviving, Gerald Gates. My mother was a serial bigamist. She would marry and not get divorces.
And how many times was she married? Because you sent me a list of names. It had to be about 10 names.
My mother married my own father 3 times documented, so that's just my dad. And she married my father while married to the gentleman that is my sister's real father, Fred Corey. The order went Fred Corey, Joseph Pisani, Gerald Gates, Ronald DeFeo, back to Gates, back to DeFeo. You know what I mean? But as far as actual marriages documented on paper, she had at least 3 with my dad.
Did you ever run across the name Opperman? Was I ever married? Probably not, right? Okay. All right. But now, how did she get a hold of Ronald Butch DeFeo while he was in prison? She started writing to him? How did that happen?
You know, that is one for the ages. I have been trying to figure that out my whole adult life. How does one actually get to the Amityville murderer and start a relationship? I mean, I must assume, I know that they corresponded on paper a lot.
Right.
He called a lot. I was forced to talk to the man as a child and call him Dad.
Really?
Yes. My mother at times when my mother did not have custody. In fact, some of my earliest memories are of sitting outside of various correctional facilities in New York State while she was having conjugal visits with the man. And I was sitting there with my stepdad. He was fully complicit in all of this.
Oh, my God. So, wait, so your mother had a thing where she would marry inmates?
He was the only one that I know of.
Okay.
That was the only inmate that I know of. I got to believe my mom was kind of trying to get money out of the guy or his family. I mean, I know that. I'll tell you truthfully, I have pieced together on my own Well, I had been talking to my older sisters for, before we all had our falling out.
Oh, let's hear it.
To be blunt, her and DeFeo had this idea. Now, DeFeo, being convicted of capital murder in New York State, cannot make any money off of the murder, okay? So he's not getting royalties from the 20-plus Amityville flicks. The people associated with him are. And my mother was married to the man. What it boils down to is if Ronald DeFeo had a living descendant, they could get the money. And originally, they wanted that descendant to be me. In the original Newsweek article that came out about my mother and his marriage, I believe it was attested to that they had a male child. And I, at a very early age, wouldn't play the game. Well, my sister Stephanie would. So that's where DeFeo having a living daughter came from. And from there, they created a whole backstory going back to the 70s. And all of my siblings, except one, was complicit in this.
So you're saying
and that, in turn, wound up being books and movies.
So you're saying it was a whole ruse, that DeFeo is really not the father of your sister?
Listen, my family is, it can be pretty well pegged that my family's Italian on both sides.
All right.
And my mom ran the longest con in New York history. It just wasn't documented. It's still going. Rick Asuna's still selling books. Katzenbach's still selling movies. So that con, we're looking at year 40 of that con, year 30, This has been going on since the 80s.
Well, but the thing is, now, she hooked up with DeFeo in 85 or 89, like you said. Isn't that after the movies came out?
Certainly is. What the book, The Night the DeFeos Died, does is it gives you I know to be totally fictional story about my mother marrying Ronald DeFeo in the 70s and hiding my mother's family from the mafia and all sorts of really interesting tales that are exactly that, tales. My mother was in upstate New York all during the time in question, according to these books and movies.
Okay, so you're saying that in this movie, The Night the DeFeos Died, but I think I saw that movie on TV recently. Is that the one they had some, I think what's his name was on there, that Sorvino, right? Was in that movie?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
That's the one.
I believe that's the one. They also had Ed Asner in one of the movies. Again, it's an interesting story that people were interested in, and Hollywood makes magic and writers write. Good story will sell. You're talking to me right now.
Yeah, but you're telling me that in the movie where they show that your mom lived with DeFeo, she never actually lived with DeFeo in a house because he was in prison already when she met him.
Never. One of the things that really upset me, is it's in writing in one book, and there's a reenactment, I believe, of my mother being in court for DeFeo's sentencing.
Okay.
The date of that being, I believe, December 11th, 1975, 11th or 12th in 1975. Well, that would be 2 days before I was born. You're lying.
Yeah, right. She'd be pregnant there about to bust, right?
Yeah, well, these people are they're even using my image to sell the movies. And they sold me for saying their movies are frauds.
Yeah, now what happened with that? Because that's really the main reason why you contacted me, right? Because you heard the other interview I did. Why don't you correct? You had some problems with Miss Kaplan, who told her story, but you have some difference of opinions. What is your position on what do you find wrong with her account?
For me, it was. Truthfully, it's just a line or two. She stated that the man I have the biggest problem with, Ryan Katzenbach, she stated that he had a lawsuit against a website discussing Amityville and that they backed out and that he won. Well, no, the lawsuit was against me, and unnamed does. He never even filed against those people. That right there, and nobody backed down. Federal cases tend to be public info. You can get this. The case was dismissed against me with prejudice.
Now, is it possible she was confused and thinking about a different lawsuit?
You know, it's possible, and I'll give the benefit of the doubt. But again, Ryan Katzenbach suing a website only happened, or anything close to that only happened once.
Okay.
He said he was going to sue the website. In fact, the exact quote against the website, his blurb on one of his web pages, his one Facebook page, was that him and his lawyer friends, for every $50 he spent filing against these people, it would cost them thousands to answer. He's a very braggadocious, spiteful man who now can't be found.
Now, what was what was going on in that website that had him upset? First, you remember the name of the website? What was it?
You know what? I'll give him a little plug. It's the Amityville Truth Board. You can find it as you Google it, or the Amityville FAQ as well.
Okay.
What his issue was he was a member of that website, and the people there, they're fans of specifically Amityville. Specifically Amityville. That's all this website deals with, is the Amityville murders and hauntings and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, the inconsistencies of his movies and stories were picked up on by these, I hate to say it, but horror nerds. You know, these are people, they're clicking away. They love this stuff. So they had the facts, and they would find his inconsistencies. And then he started threatening them with libel, slander, defamation. Well, after a period in time, I actually entered that website and started speaking. And when that happened, he became litigious. That's not the correct word. He started suing people, to be blunt.
Right.
He started threatening lawsuits for years. And then finally it hit with me. Because as it's stated by one of the people on that website, if I wasn't telling the truth, that his stories are bogus, that my mother fabricated a tale for gain somehow, you wouldn't have bothered with me. I'm just some weird guy talking on a website.
All right. But you were like the big name because you're related to your mom and you're related to the case. Supposedly this guy DeFeo was your father in some capacity, stepfather or whatever.
They tried to peg him as my father.
Right.
I said, no, I know who my dad is, you know. It went so far as to I myself, at my own cost, tried to set up very early on. I said, we could squash this all right now. Give me a blood test with my sister. If the blood matches, DeFeo's not her father. It's really that simple. Let's just do this.
Yeah, nowadays that would be very simple to do too. Now, what was his actual complaint against you when he filed this lawsuit? First of all, how much damages was he seeking?
It was either $5 million or $5 billion. I don't have the actual lawsuit anymore, but at one point, I think for just one line, he was knocking me $1 million. He hit me $1 million in one line for calling him a fraud and a charlatan because I was ruining his ability to make money off of the product he worked so hard over. All I did was say it's not true.
Right,
That's all I did.
That was his big complaint. Now, do you still participate in those message boards?
You know, I'll be very candid. I only rear my head when something pertaining to me pops up. Something near to me, because as far as I'm concerned, there's a real DeFeo family left out there. and they have to deal with this. And there's the Lutz boys. They've had to deal with it. Then there's me. I've had to deal with what I've had to deal with it. All based on Ronald DeFeo's actions. But I don't purport to be knowledgeable of anything except what I saw, where I was, who my mom is, who my siblings are. This man came out. Now, my mother passed away, and they're reissuing the book the night the DeFeos died. So I popped my head back into the website. Hey, I'm here, and if Rick Osuna's seeing this, we need to talk, buddy. Because, again, you're discussing my family, my life, and using my image to sell your products. You don't have that right, and your products are fraudulent.
Now,
it got to the point where these people turn off comments on their Facebook posts. If you were to YouTube Rick Osuna's latest video and revamped website, you'll see the comments are off for his YouTube video. Nobody's allowed to say he's not telling the truth.
Let me ask you, when did your mother pass?
My mother passed 3 years ago. It was 2016.
And how was the relationship with your mom there toward the end? Did you guys reconcile all this, or still at war?
My family is, as I discussed, very Italian and very vindictive.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me my mother passed away. My father showed up at my door in tears to tell me. I was not invited to the service, and I was told my mother's dying breath was cursing my life.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
Because I turned on the family.
Yeah. Now, were they still making money from this at the end there, all this 3 years ago?
You know, the movie was sold. The producer of the movie sold his rights, I'm understanding, to Stars and Reels, the cable television network. So there's money there. And the book was never out of print. You could always order it on Amazon. So there's money there. You know, I don't know who's being compensated or how. I just pretty much don't believe that my family did this for fun, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Someone's making money.
Peter Pisani, let's take a little commercial break, okay? And we'll be right back in about 3 minutes. We're here with Peter Pisani. He's telling us this is the guy, man. He's the son of Geraldine DeFeo, who married Ronald DeFeo, the murderer, the convicted murderer. There's no doubt about that. And he's a stepson, you know, that's all in question. But this guy knows the inside information. So we're going to get back with more of Peter Pisani right after these messages. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with Peter Pisani. He's the son of Geraldine DeFeo, who married Ronald DeFeo, the murderer there, the original murderer. He murdered the Lutz family in the Amityville Horror story. So now, Peter, you've been around this whole thing your whole life, since 10 years old, the last 35 years, whatever, right? Now, what do you think happened that night when Ronald DeFeo murdered that family?
You know, I was told, let me put it to you like this. I was told when I was a child that Ronald DeFeo killed his whole family. There was no haunting. There were no little flies whispering, kill, kill, kill. I think he got in a drunken brawl with his dad and just lit everybody up. It's really that simple. And my take on that is due to the reason that, as I started to say as a child, I was told a story that George Lutz went to Ronald DeFeo and said, hey, I want to make some money. You get an insanity plea and you get out, and I get to sell books and movies. and they cooked up the tale of a haunting and what have you. You know, I've never been in the house. My mother sure has. My mother, as a child, had a lot of pictures of the interior, and in fact, they used photos that I know came from my mother's collection on various websites to sell movies and books and what have you. But as far as that night goes, I believe Ronald DeFeo got a drunken brawl with his dad and snapped out and killed his family. Because remember, at the end of the day, we're discussing people making money on the backs of dead children. And that really sticks in my craw because you threw me into it. You know, that's the life I was given by my mother and siblings. And who told, as an adult, okay, I'm pretty upset.
And who told you this story about the Lutz and the approaching DeFeo?
That came from my mother.
From your mom, okay. That
came from my mother. I mean, again, I was a kid. Of course I was inquisitive about it, you know. When the movies and such started coming out, you know, especially the ones dealing with my mother's fabricated tales, I had to live with that. So I had questions. Why do I got to talk to this guy? Why do I have to ingratiate myself to this guy? You know, I was 10.
Yeah, what were those conversations like? Because it's not comfortable talking to anybody. I talk to people in prison all the time. It's not a comfortable situation. Because you're in your mind, you're thinking about what they're going through over there. It's not a fun conversation. What did you guys talk about?
Well, in retrospect, I remember he knew a lot about me, which at the time, okay, the guy, I'm a kid. I'm 10, I'm 12. I'm talking to the guy, and he knows a lot about me. And it didn't faze me. It was just like having a conversation. He was my stepdad. I'm told I have to respect this guy. I have to talk to him, you know? It was no different to me than talking to my other stepdad, because remember, my mother didn't believe in divorces, apparently.
Right. Now, were you still living with your stepdad when you were talking to the other stepdad? Or no, were you living with your real dad when you were talking to the stepdad on the phone?
Well, truth be told, my biological father had custody of me.
Right.
And my mother and that side of the family had access to me anytime they wanted. They could see me anytime they wanted. You know, we lived about 30 miles apart at the time. And he was there. My stepdad was there. You know, when I was with my mother's side, my mother's side of my family, you know, with my older sisters or whatever, he was right there. He knew all about it. He would drive my mother to conjugal visits at Attica and all the various other lovely facilities New York has to offer that rap guys sing about, you know?
Yeah.
I'm 12, 13 years old, and I'm spending my Saturdays sitting there looking at Greenhaven Correctional or Marcy Correctional, you know, after a 3-hour drive, just so my mother could do what she had to do. And my stepdad, he drove her there.
And when they would go home, would they go back to the same bedroom together and sleep together that night?
Yeah.
Oh,
perfectly normal.
Okay, listen, I'm not here to judge anybody. Now, let me ask you another question. You know what I mean? Let's, especially the dead. You know, people, make their own lives. You know what I mean? And somehow they justify things in their head. Now, what about you mentioned that your mom had all these pictures inside the house. How did she get inside the house to take pictures?
She was legally married to the She was legally married to the guy, and I'm assuming she went to the current owners and said, "Hey, I'm Geraldine DeFeo." I'm guessing for maybe a little taste of notoriety or just a tale to tell at the country club, and let her in, you know. I'm sure there are times she was there with actual movie producers and authors to lend credence to this. You know, a little bit more weight. You don't buy the Amityville and expect not to get weirdos at your door.
Yeah. Now, what about there's been so many Ghostbusters and ghost hunters and all types who claim, oh, no, there's ghosts in their hills, right? Have any of them contacted you and said, hey, Peter, let me tell you, there's really ghosts in there?
I let people ride their vibe. I've gotten a lot in my, inbox.
Okay.
Through the years, personally, I don't know who, you know what I mean? That's a tough one for me, because I've heard from a woman who married the guy who did it. It was all just a little money maker, you know. At the same time, unless somebody straight up says to me that they saw a bleeding red room, because that room, didn't exist apparently.
Right.
Unless, hey, I'll believe you. They say that it was on an Indian burial ground and what have you. And who knows? I live real close to the native folk in upstate New York, and who knows? They have their ways and their demons too.
Now, okay, the Amityville story is probably one of the biggest. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. You say Amityville Horror. Everybody's going to know what you're talking about. The house. They know the Lutz, the DeFeos. They know all these names. Now, so this is a big. If this was a scam, right? Like you're saying, and your mom and DeFeo pull this thing off, was your mom involved in any other kind of smaller scale scams that you're aware of?
Yeah, my mother was incarcerated when I was younger, herself. The FBI has come to my door as a child. I remember the FBI coming to the door to ask my grandparents or my dad about other things having to do with my mother, because one of the things that a good liar does is there's always a kernel of truth in the lie. And so when they discuss, my mother's family, having certain connections with Italian gentlemen of ill rapport, we'll say, that there's some reality there. So my mother's always been on a lot of radars, but she pulled a pretty big hustle, and I believe in 1979. That's actually one of the items used in my defense when saying you're making all this up. No, she was in Broome County Jail in 1979. Google exists. Look at it. Yeah, she had a history of it. It was always moving on to, there's always an angle. There's always a hustle. There are always hangers-on around her willing to give her a couple bucks. When I was a kid, one of the reasons I was not too jaded was my mother had money, man. I was when my mother actually acted as a mother, anything I wanted was there. My mother's hustle is so good that off the back of Amityville, she was able to purchase a video store in a small Pennsylvania town. That's how good her hustle was.
Hey, you mentioned
just off the way to Amityville.
You mentioned she was in jail in '79. Do you remember what those charges were?
I want to say grand larceny.
Okay. Maybe she stole all those videos she was renting out, right? We haven't better look into this, man, right? She never returned them. She was renting them from other stores.
Thank you for making this fun. This could have been gut-wrenching, but thank you.
No, this is a great story, man. But now, let me ask you this now. Has there ever been, besides what you're telling me here today, has there ever been all these Ghostbusters and all these types, everybody's obsessed with this armchair detectives, right? Has anybody ever uncovered all this stuff about your mom, about the bigamy, about marrying him in prison after all these things took place? And has anybody ever uncovered any of that?
Yes. Actually, the website I plugged earlier, the Amityville FAQ, or that's the Amityville Truth Board would be the easiest way to find it on Google.
And
They found, I mean, I don't know who these people are, right? Stop and think about this one from my angle. Here's these anonymous people who live behind a keyboard who I don't know who they are, but they're pulling up my father's, when I was being sued, my inbox started zinging. Here's your father and mother purchasing a house 2 weeks before you were born. Here's that indenture. Here's that piece of paper. Here's your sister's birth certificate. Here's your birth certificate. Here's your father's certificate of marriage from your mother in Virginia in 73. Yeah, a lot of people know about this. And that's what made Katzenbach to go batty, is he was called on it. Here, look at this. They literally fabricated, their defense on this was that the people literally hacked the New York State database and was planning false paperwork.
Oh, really? Really? That's a good one.
And the best part,
yeah,
this was said in the lawsuit. It's in the thousands of pages that were filed against me, buried, that I and the other Does, people of influence, who he could never name, the Does. You know, we were planning paperwork in New York State's databanks. That's how ridiculous it gets.
But this has never come out in a book or a documentary or a film or anything. None of these facts about your mom, the multiple bigamy.
I have never collated it. I've been asked about it a lot.
Okay.
You know, it's never been collated. I at one point in time was talking to an author. And then I decided, you know what, I don't need my guts ripped out anymore right now.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that was going on was when Ryan Katzenbach was addressing me publicly at the very beginning, he was attacking my girlfriend at the time. She was dying of scleroderma. I literally lost my job because I was served at work while my girlfriend was dying of scleroderma. And then the owner of the pizza joint I worked at started talking to the movie producers because he wanted 15 minutes. Like, this truthfully has been a really terrible experience for me. This is the first time I'm ever telling people, hey, look here. Hey, look there. The facts are out there. Don't waste your money on this dribble. If you want a good tale, listen to it. Just go into it knowing it's fiction.
Entertainment.
Don't
If you want to be
believe this
entertained.
is true.
Yeah, I'm not going to go watch the Amityville Horror and change my life. It's entertainment. You know what I mean? You go in there to enjoy it. Now, what about with this lawsuit? Did you actually have to hire an attorney and put up a defense?
What I did was I let the man. He kept filing paperwork.
Okay.
So after a year of filing paperwork, and I still hadn't hired a lawyer, the judge started getting upset because I was not, like, again, for me to defend myself, I'm in New York. I got to fly to California. And if I lose this, I have to pay his legal fees and give him the millions upon millions of dollars. So I let him keep filing and filing and filing. And finally, the judge got upset and said, hey, you need to show cause now. It's time. And the man quit filing. So I never even had to show up. The judge just dismissed it outright with prejudice.
So you never responded to his complaints and his emotions even once?
No.
Did you show up at court?
I was never, or excuse me, no, I did not.
Okay.
I believe I was ordered to appear once, and I did not. I will say that I did not. Because the guy told me, he put it in a big Facebook blurb, I'm just going to keep filing papers so Peter has to spend money. Peter and this website have to spend money to respond. That's the thing. I don't have to spend money to respond. Just file away, little buddy. It's your money.
Hey, where do you live now? You're still on the East Coast?
Yeah, I'm in upstate New York. I'm in For obvious reasons, I don't want to say
No,
where
that's
I
fine.
am.
That's fine. Yeah.
I'm in upstate New York. I grew up in just outside of Binghamton, New York, about an hour south of Syracuse. I grew up. They called it Little Italy where I grew up. That was one of the things everybody liked to toss at me, was that my family had quote-unquote connections. My hometown is the place where the big mafia bust happened in Appalachian, New York.
Sure.
Like my high school, to put it bluntly, my high school chemistry teacher and football coach's dad, that happened on his land.
Okay. Yeah.
Really Italian part of the world where I'm from.
It's a small world, that's for sure. Okay.
Well, yeah, that's one of those things. It's like, that's one of the reasons, like, my own sisters won't answer me. So how do you explain your high school yearbook picture if you were in Long Island with the murderer? Like, you existed. People know you.
Well, what do you think? Your sisters, how come they don't want to come out and tell the truth? Do you think they're making money off this?
All three of my sisters are in the book as Ronald DeFeo's stepchildren.
Fascinating. And that's impossible because you know who their fathers
two of them, my two older sisters are in the books as his stepchildren. And my other sister is billed as his daughter. Because to bring it back home, remember, it was all a hustle, baby. And if DeFeo had a kid, that kid could get the money. So that's why they started the tale to begin with. And then it just steamrolled from there.
And you haven't heard anything from Ketzenbach or Osano in years, right? Since that lawsuit?
No. But I was ready to let it die with my mom. But now Rick Osuna, who wrote the book the night DeFeo died, has a new little video blurb for it that the comments are off. And there's trendy new packaging. And I'm going to go ahead and give the man the $17 or whatever he wants, and I'm going to read it. And then I'm going to destroy it publicly again.
Okay, great, man. Hey, listen, is there anything you want to leave us with? You think we covered everything in the story, or is there something I'm leaving out?
Yeah, I had my say, and you were more than fair to me, sir.
Okay, thank you. No, I enjoyed this too. You're a good guy, man. I like you.
I appreciate that. All I want to say is your fans out there that are interested in this, just one thing, fans. You're a fan, but it's about somebody's life at the other end of that tale.
It's so true. And
the DeFeo family's been eating this for 40 years. The Lutz boys have been eating this. I've been eating it. Just remember, be gentle out there, fans. Be gentle. Oh, just be gentle. Thank you.
It's so true, man, because, you're one guy and you get 100 messages and each one might be saying the same thing, too. A little, hey, you pronounced something wrong and you got this little fact wrong. It's just overwhelming. People need to realize that people in the public eye are human beings. They have to have a life. They wake up, they have to eat breakfast and, take care of their kids, take their kids to school and stuff like that.
I was 15. Yeah. I mean, we have lives as you open the program with your life was happening. We were hitting and missing,
Right.
There's a real life at the end of it. At the end of the day, you're like, again, I was 15 years old the first time a 30-year-old woman approached me over this. Whoa, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I would say. Just remember, children died, and there are families and people at the back side of this.
There you go, man. Peter Pisani, thank you so much. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, there we had Peter Pisani. Okay, and he contacted me because he heard the show we did with Miss Kaplan there, Sachs. Very nice woman. And he had a little discrepancies there he wanted to correct. So anybody involved with this story wants to come back on the air with me, I'll talk about this stuff all day long. I wasn't expecting this, man. Bigamy. He sent me a long letter. Hey, by the way, too, I wanted to say, too, when he mentioned the part about his girlfriend was dying when he was getting served with this paper, I know he didn't say too much on the air, but I can tell you that off the air, this had a huge effect on his life and something that was very upsetting to him. And I know this had a big effect, a tragic effect on his life, a traumatic effect. Okay, we'll be right back after these messages. I'll give you a little wrap up and some more stuff after these messages.